drop the link in. Welcome everybody to the Ortelius architecture meeting for Thursday, July 6th. Let me drop the link in the chat. Please sign in. And let me share my screen. We'll get going here. Okay. So just we kind of had a little bit of this discussion on the outreach meeting, but a little better to do it here. So I did look into initially I thought we were going to be able to use Riot.js because Riot.js was what Docker Hub was written in. And what I realized when I went to go pull the code down for Docker Hub, that it was like this stripped down version, and it wasn't really the whole, it was like a side project somebody was working on. So I took another look, and based on Joseph's recommendation, I took another look at Svelte, and that one has the most like plugins that are available. So we have the Svelte kit and the material UI. So the links are here. And also I didn't put the links in for the tutorials, but they have some decent tutorials. I followed the basic tutorial along, and basically it was pretty easy to get up and going. One of the nice, you can think of Svelte as kind of like a lightweight version of React. And it's based on components. So there are UI components. Basically you can create, like, let's say we have like a get detail box that we want to show. That get detail box can be a component. That code gets placed in its own file, and then it's included into the template. So it's going to kind of follow along with our microservice component design at that level. So the routing side, basically every page is a new route, and all the routing's handled internally. So there's not a lot of extra work we need to do on that front for routing between pages and passing stuff. One of the interesting things that Svelte does is, even though it's kind of like Hugo or Doxy, what it does is and it's a little bit different from React in this aspect, is it will, you have to run it through a compiler, and it'll take all of the templating and all the component tags and expand them out into native JavaScript code. So it ends up being very lightweight and very small footprint. And because of that, it's fast. One thing right now I need to put in here, we're not going to worry about, we're going to skip mobile and tablet for now. Our data model is so huge that we have a lot of data to display, and it's just not practical to display it on a phone at this point. There may be some actions, because we're more of like a reporting, you can think of us more on the reporting side than like where you're going to interact and have to do things. That's why we're going to be that those platforms just don't make much sense to do that type of reporting on a phone. When we get it, if we had the need to, let's say you wanted to generate a report kind of like offline and then send it to somebody, like maybe an SBOM report or something like that, that may be one little piece of the whole puzzle that we would be able to put into a mobile. But I think that would be a totally separate interface that would be different than the main UI on that front.
Can I cut in for a sec?
Yeah.
As the person with the most UI expertise, I have to wonder why you keep veering away from React. Is there something about React that doesn't appeal to you? Because React has the most documentation, the most plugins, the largest audience, a great interface, systems like Next.js, which will do server-side rendering, and as a dominant force in UI. Why are you particularly so adverse to just adopting the industry standard?
I'm not. We were just trying to look at new frameworks that are out there. So this is one of the frameworks that one of our contributors did work on that had some UI experience that brought to the table the Svelte.
Well, there are, a lot of frameworks out there, but when you're dealing with open source and people coming in and out,
Yeah,
one of the main concerns is, are the majority of the people who are going to be working on it, not necessarily within the inner team, but the outer team, familiar and educated with the platform enough that they can do meaningful work
yeah,
without having to learn a new framework. I really advocate for going with industry standards from the point of view of diminishing the amount of education you need to do to anyone coming in and learning it from the outside, and taking advantage of the large amount of support, whether it's on frameworks like Stack Overflow or just in the general community,
yeah.
to a very proven and thoroughly documented API system.
Yeah, and we could take a look at React again. We haven't really started on the front end, so either way, it's really enough to go ahead and take a look at that. Can you drop some links on like the best place to get started?
All right. I would say I'll drop the link, but as I'm doing so, Vercel. There's a documentation link here. Next.js. There we go. Next.js is a framework with server-side rendering,
Okay.
implicit routing. You just have to create a page and it's implicitly linked to middleware for trying to get back to the Zoom here.
Yeah, and that sounds very similar to what the Svelte has with the implicit routing.
It has basically, like I said, server-side routing, support for an API system where you can write a lot of middleware APIs directly in the UI layer. I've used it for every personally launched web project I've done for the last few years. It's got location optimization for various mirrors. It doesn't force you to use a particular UI system. I would point for, if you wanted to look at a particular set of UI components, I'm trying to, it's Chakra, I believe. Yeah, I'll put a link to Chakra. It's something I've is found very useful recently.
All right.
Dave, what is your thought about remix framework?
It has some ability to do what you call reactive styling. You can type in HTML style features directly into the components like height, width, overflow, without having to keep on going A/B between your style sheet and your
Right.
component layer. It has most of the UI components you need for any sort of form system.
So do you use the two together then? The Next.js?
Yes. In fact, I'm currently working on something which is like a Glyph analog. And yes, Chakra not only has specific documentation for how to integrate itself inside of Next, but it's either of these systems could be used independently. And also as this is kind of a side vector. as a system which works very well for kind of like putting a lot of data into say a front-end mirror. RxJS is a great state system that works well with Chakra and Next. It allows you to use things like IndexedDB as a mirror for your data, so you could do local transforms and search in detail, and it'll handle a lot of the things, including observing changes in the data layer, loading in, a schema, and doing a lot of middleware stuff. Again, this is something could be used as Svelte as well, but these are some of the utilities I've used, as well as, and I'm just kind of like dumping my.
No, sounds good. That's why we're here.
Here's like for some things I've done in terms of being able to put visualizations up, both SVG and when it comes to one of the benefits to using a popular language is you get things like, sorry, this is actually what I meant to paste. SVGR is a system which will convert any SVG into an interactive and dynamic React component. So you can actually, if you have something which has, a fairly complex UI, you could just dump an SVG prelim and SVGR and turn it into a React component, and it'll bring all your styles in. And for example, I had an icon that I wanted to be able to change color when it hovers over. It's very easy to create an icon and then expose things like the color to an enclosing context that they can change it and hover over, or potentially like scale it, change the size. These are the sort of things which you get when these components are aware of each other because of their general success and market share. Then they start to accommodate each other's UI, and you also have the system where you're likely to find a fair number of people who have used them in combination and might be familiar with border issues.
Yeah.
If there are. And in general, I find it's always a good idea to use a platform wherein if you do paint yourself into a corner, they have active Discord channels. They have a large number of users. I've gotten support, generally speaking, when I find I run into an issue within 2 to 4 hours online. That's meaningful and useful.
Oh yeah.
So these are some of the things I've worked with and some of the reasons why I would advocate.
Have you worked with any of these with like a D3S or Viz.js for the
well, yeah, I mean,
like
I've done a couple of D3 injects into React. For the most part, it's just essentially what you end up doing is they have a system called reference in React, wherein you throw up a DOM into your template, you export something that allows you to refer to its element directly,
yeah.
and then you pass that element to, like, that's how I do the first thing I pass in the SVG.js allows you to use like vector commands to draw an SVG like from scratch.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm working on a Glyphy thing, so when I have a lot of DOM boxes and I want to draw, lines between them, so I throw in an SVG into a layer which is got an overflow show, and then I draw my lines between any number of XY coordinates, and jump and you're done, and that's all it takes. And it's fast enough to be responsive with a mouse. When I start dragging the box around, I can redraw the lines, and it shows in real time, and it's practical and very low impact on terms of what it demands from the browser. And you can import other SVGs into it. So these are the sort of things I do on a routine basis to do extremely fast and high-powered development.
Nice. Which one do you recommend to start with, the Next.js or like the?
That's okay. No worries.
Is it okay if I get on a call from my internet?
Well, I would I suppose it would depend on what sort of things you're most concerned with, performance or interface elements. Chakra kind of shows,
Just
I would say, if you want to look at how you could save a lot of time in terms of not having to develop custom utilities for every particular interface scenario,
right.
Chakra is a great way to see a lot of things you can drop in and use and off the cuff, as well as how it integrates CSS directly into the markup.
Okay,
It's
cool.
a great way to see how you can rapidly customize and tweak a visual component layer without getting what do you call, kind of like, without committing to someone else's very specific look and feel.
Right.
A good example for that is you create a JSON file which has all of the what do you call, conventions. At the top layer, it presents downwards on a DOM element, and everything inside that DOM element inherits the styles you define. I've been able to define a whole lot of colors that I use in icons and such into its color library, which allows you to very fast create a shared color library, which works through the entire application tree.
Yep.
And to a point where, for instance, if we then wanted to do a reverse interface at some layer, one could easily see having a whole second palette come in, and we just switch off dynamically when we go into black mode. And that's one of the,
So the Chakra UI would be one of those. Would it be the Next.js or the Chakra UI that would?
Chakra. Well, let me put it this way: if you want to kind of see the fun factor,
Yeah.
Chakra is a nice jam in. If you want to see kind of a way to save times in terms of routing and optimizing stuff on the server, and basically a good convention for page layouts. Then they have like pages and then layouts which wrap around the pages.
Yeah.
You can have a shared layout for the entire document. You can have custom layouts for other subcomponents. You can nest layouts. There's a whole lot there. If you want to see kind of the enterprise treatment of how large applications, my last contract was with Armour, which is Under Armour, which is a fashion system out of the East Coast, and they use the hell out of it to make an extremely large e-commerce platform very responsive to the kind of work they're doing. For instance, one of the nice things about it is if there are kind of like leaf components you don't expect to be required, except in certain scenarios, you don't have to load your entire application single page immediately. You can load the main components and then dynamically load subcomponents as they're needed by the UI.
Right.
To allow you a faster initial load time. And they have whole mechanics in there for that. A mechanic they call suspend, which is, it levers stuff that's part of the basic React component, but it shows how you don't need to go like dive into Webpack in order to minimize the loading of infrequently used components and increase the load time of your initial hit.
Perfect. All right, I will take a look at those. That sounds like a good way that we should look at going. One of the main things with the Svelte was that it had a bunch of pre-built components that we could reuse, and it sounds like the ones that you've laid out here are have that same functionality. So
yeah, and I am not trying to diminish the fact that Svelte is a strong platform and does have a lot of good elements to it. I'm not trying to diminish other systems or saying if I don't get my tools, I'll pout and go home. I'd be happy to learn and pick up Svelte. I'm sure it'd be fine. I am just concerned that we, as something that's not a 40-hour-a-week job for any of us, we want to diminish kind of like paint yourself in the corner time.
Yep.
By not picking up stuff that isn't as well supported as it could be.
I totally agree, and thank you for bringing these out, and I will take a look at them. And everybody else, poke around on the links that Dave put out here, and we'll circle back around on Discord on that topic.
Sure. And I also, I mean, this is, by the way, none of the only thing on these whole RxJS is something which is a consideration that doesn't depend on adoption of any of the other things I've put forward. It's a way to mirror large data collections in the client in order to do, say, you know, quick sort, filter, atomic operations, without having to put a whole lot of time into developing a client-side database.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we're going to have to figure out is how to manage large lists and how to do like pagination and stuff like that.
Right.
And I don't know if that'd be the RxJS or some other, like in our current UI, we use datatables.net, which is basically a jQuery plugin. So, but I'm not, I don't care for the way our tables work and handled in our current version.
Right.
I think there's better ways.
There's a whole table library which essentially wraps around the HTML table that I've used in the past. There's a lot of good table stuff that just discussing tables could be an entire meeting.
Oh yeah,
but
definitely.
But there's a lot of options. As a kind of a general point of like tableness, one of the things I've found extremely effective in my own work is I'm kind of pulling up a guide for them now. Is this right? Yeah, CSS Grid allows you to do a lot of very what do you call very targeted sizing and styling of grid type elements in CSS using a browser native method. So for instance, you can specify columns as having absolute size, or you can specify them as being, okay, if you have like 3 absolute size columns and then 3 other columns, you could say, I want one of the columns to use 50% of the remaining space. I want another column to use 25% of the remaining space, and I want or 20 units of remaining space, and I want another column to use 15 units of remaining space, so that instead of having to do a lot of complex math in terms of percents and figuring out like, oh, we added another column, I guess we have to take 5% off everyone. You simply create a standard of, you know, every free column uses 10 units of free space as a standard. If it's a big one, it uses 20. If it's a small one, it uses 5. And then if you add another one, it's just another 10 units of free space you have to flip around. So it's a good way of styling and using a native CSS grid system to rapidly develop a lot of grid components.
Nice.
And again, this isn't something that depends on adoption of any particular framework, whether it's Svelte, Chakra, Next, or RX, or React. It's just a good way in general to style lists on the browser.
Yeah.
We have to find a library for making the dashboard. So for React, this is the React admin, and for the Next.js, we have lot of alternatives. So we have to choose one for them.
Right, and I think the way I'm kind of approaching the development is working backwards from the detail screen. So we'll start with a single component version, for example, and all of the data around that single component version. And then once we have that where we like it, then we can work backwards to the lists and things like that to be able to navigate to find that component version.
Yeah.
I shared the demo in the chat. Can you have a look? I have his demo code.
I would encourage a more holistic look at designing a layout system that works in multiple scenarios. I don't know if you've seen the screens I sent up to Tracy, but if I could walk through some work I've done in Figma to kind of show you what I'm kind of gunning for. Can I screen share and get that? Okay, so
Let me stop sharing.
But,
Also, the new AI tool has come, so we can extract the React code from the Figma.
um,
It is by
there's ways to go from Figma to React. Honestly, the way I'm doing things, I don't necessarily know that's going to be a particular great time saver. So basically, I'm a big fan of the general utility you get out of components, out of applications like Craigslist and Google. And so my general approach would be, do a searchable list of the various top-down components as a very clean, open homepage.
Yep.
Where if you see in the top header, you can type anything you want, and it doesn't matter which particular school of things you in, and then you do a server-side poll of all the applications, documents, environments, components that have that in them, and then by clicking on, say, a domain, you get a easily searchable kind of tree view where you can in any particular place, I guess this should be bold. There we go. So when you click on any particular component, not only do you see its children immediately, but you see a quick list of all of its immediate content. And then if you toggle off the top drop down, you could see some of its major properties. Again, this isn't meant to completely define a particular element, but just to let you know that you have found the particular area of focus that's relevant to your work. And then the green button on the bottom right lets you go in and deep drill down into that particular context.
Yep.
And as a kind of convention, that basically allows you to skip a whole lot of visual noise and drill down to your area of interest. Similarly with the environment, I noticed there's a lot of work on the interface. Sorry, my Zoom bar is kind of getting in the way here. Into comparison, so in the areas in which it's relevant, such as environments, where comparing them is about all you would normally do. The idea is, instead of having a bunch of check bars which cloud up the interface, and you can drag any one of these down to this pink area, and then you get a list of a few things you can compare. And if you see down below the red dot, the compare element.
Yep.
Once you have two or more things, you can hit compare and go to compare to screen. I have not visually drilled down to that layer, but it kind of shows you an approach. Similarly with components, you drill down into a component, you see a quick pop-up of if it's got a parent, what its parent are, what its immediate dependencies are, at least maybe up to 10 or so, which particular things are using it at a component layer, and again, which environments it's in, which applications use it, which domains feature it, as a quick way to just see its context. Not a definitive list, but just a list of, say, the top 20 or whatever, and a quick way to toggle over to its properties to see some of the statistics about it. One of the things I didn't encounter into these, and I don't know exactly how or where it would be, is you might also want a panel for most recent deployments, but I think that's more about applications.
Yes, that is.
And then there we go. So when you get down into a Explorer list, you could get to this by, say, on the top here, if you were to simply click on domains or environments or applications, you would go to an Explorer list. This would be if you clicked on components, but not a specific component, just an alphabetized list with the search, again, a search ability. All these drop downs are showing like locked in an open position. It would look a little bit more like this, but if, for instance, you go and you group by domain here, then essentially the list toggles to, if you notice, there's no hairlines. I find in general, hairlines are just visual noise you don't need.
Right.
And the deployments then will orient around the domains, sorting by domains, so you can see how the components fall down in a domain by domain level. Again, there is a potential that if the list becomes too exhaustive, we may want to have like a more link at the above the pink line to show a domain with large numbers of components, which I'm sure most of them will have.
Yep.
But at least it'll give kind of a starting taste for how these things play out. Or maybe we don't. Maybe we literally want to show all the components under a domain and just use like mouse wheel scrolling or like the tab down button. And again, any one of these components can be dragged down into by the component name down to here. I guess it's above here.
I have to, Dave, I have to drop, but I'm
Sure.
gonna leave this meeting running. I have to go to a customer call, but go ahead and walk through this with everybody else and I will, it looks great. I like the idea.
Okay.
So
So
Tracy, I made you host, so you should, when I leave, should keep recording and you should be able to run it.
all right.
Oh,
Well,
Okay,
let's
now I
see
just
if it
want to
works.
let everybody know that I put in the chat a Zoom meeting invite to continue this conversation in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
If you're
Um,
interested in digging down any deeper.
I only have like another 15 seconds left, so I just wanted to quickly go. As you hover over any of these headlines, it gives you an option for a tilde to do quick, the group by domain, which I show below. Collapse domains would basically, if a component is more than one domain, you would just list the number of domains by here. And the ability to click on a domain and either filter for it, i.e. only show its components, or exclude components which are in it if you wanted to kind of inverse and knock stuff around in a negative way. Similarly for last deployment, I noticed you have the option for showing things which I haven't actually been deployed yet, which you could again use as a focal system. And I left out the parent component because I wasn't completely sure how informative it was on a first blush list, but if you wanted to go into columns and add it back in, or if you wanted to remove components or columns to reduce your visual noise, you could do things here with the gear system. And this is a general motif we could use for all the grids, whether it's a domain grid, an environment grid, an application grid. Now, once we develop a motif and a system of filtration, one could easily drop in a config and use it for any number of different environments to make sure. And that's one of the reasons I didn't particularly want to do, let's drill down to one component, one system and build it to death. I wanted to develop a visual language that we could use across multiple components, and then just expand it with a configuration by configuration basis for different scenarios and different contexts. So that's it. That's the end of this presentation. Obviously, there's a lot more, as in, well, where are the properties? When you click on an element as opposed to dragging it, you would go to a property screen. I haven't done the UX for that yet because I wanted to basically do a strategic to tactical drill down of just the first two levels of the application.
And more to come.
Yeah, more to come.
Lots more discussion on this. This is kind of an important topic for us because we've been talking about redoing the UI, and Dave has really stepped up to dig into it. And this is all part of our our bounties and the work that we're doing around the Ripple grant. So please join us in 45 minutes if you want to continue on this conversation, or you want to have any input, or you want to get involved in helping with building this.
Yeah, and
right.
none of this locks us into any of the software implementations I've mentioned. They're all capable, whether it's Svelte or Chakra, of giving us this sort of interface. We just have to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. And on that, we are at our 30 minutes. Does anybody else have anything that we need to cover in this call?
No, Dave just taught me how to be a front-end engineer in
I
about
know, it was
half
pretty
an hour.
fascinating, right?
It's insane.
I am also
Please
currently
don't,
doing
hopefully
it
don't eat
for
penguins.
my job.
So yeah, if you want to get involved in, working with
Yeah.
Dave on this effort, be sure and join us in 45 minutes. And on that, I am going to end the meeting and we will see you all shortly, possibly, or not, in 2 weeks.
All right, thanks for
Awesome.
your time.
Cheers,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.